Guys, how's it going? It's Hub, and I am back to talk some more comics with you. I know it's been longer than I thought it would be. I was keeping up a pretty good clip of going through spooky Halloween themed comics, and then I hit a roadblock called trying to finish up the Tales from the Haunted Disco Barn episode, and that just went up yesterday, so I'm back on track. But now there's only 2 days till Halloween, so this might extend slightly into November because I've got actually a there it is. Got actually a stack of comics that I want to get to for this. But let's get it underway. Also, hey, did you guys like Tales from the Haunted Disco Barn? I hope you did. I worked really hard on it, and I can't tell how it came out. It's one of those where when I finished it, I was like, this is garbage. And then I did the first round of editing, and I was like, well, this is actually pretty good. And then I did the next round of editing and was like, no, it's garbage. And then did another round, and I was like, it's great. And now I'm, bah! I don't know. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Although, if you did have any questions about the process for that or the show in general, I'll make another little video about that. But what we are here to talk about is some spooky comics. First up, I did promise that we were going to talk about Satana next. So, we will. In fact, we will talk about the issue that has Satana's first appearance in it. It is the magazine, the black and white horror magazine, Vampire Tales, #2. And this comic is fucking rad, and we're not going to talk about Satana that much. And just to be clear, I'm saying Satana or Satana, not Zatanna, because it's Marvel and she's the Devil's daughter, and it's not DC and she's Zartan's daughter? Zartan doesn't sound right, but I think that's actually it. No. So, there's a lot going on in this fucking magazine. It's a black and white vampire magazine. I had not actually read it. I'd had it for a while and had it vaguely in my mind that I wanted to do a thing on it, so I was waiting to read it. Kind of wish I hadn't. Waited, I mean. Not that I hadn't read it, but I probably wouldn't have tried to put the focus on Satana in it because she has a very brief appearance in it, and it is also her first appearance is it's a 4-page story that is centered around an attempted assault on her. And that's in fact the whole story. So it's very briefly that I'm going to be discussing it, but for the next like 20 seconds or so, the topic is going to come up. A man tries to assault, say, a woman, a pretty lady who's walking down the street, and it turns out that it is Satana, so she sucks all of the life out of his body and leaves him a desiccated husk, and then a little tiny butterfly she pulls out of his mouth. And that's it. Not sure how to feel about it. It is weird to center the first appearance of a fairly important, or who they intended to be a fairly important character, around an event like that and having it just be a like 4-page story. The art in it is gorgeous. It is John Romita, and it is just like really well shadowed and stuff. And like you can tell he's enjoying the medium of black and white for this, just with the way he gets to do the shading in it, and it looks very nice, but it is kind of disturbing and a little bit lascivious in the way that it handles the subject matter in a way that's not great, but also not surprising. But the rest of this comic, holy shit! I gotta get some more of these, man. I'll just tell you some of the artists and writers that are involved. There's 2 stories by Don McGregor. There's one by Gardner Fox. There's one, but the Satana one is by Roy Thomas. Jim Steranko does a story in it. The whole thing is just gorgeous. And then the artists there's Rich Buckler does a couple. Klaus Janson does some of the inking. The Steranko one is Steranko. There's a guy named Jesus something. It begins with a B, who I had not been familiar with, but damn, it's really nice looking. He illustrates the Gardner Fox one, and Gardner Fox is becoming a favorite of mine in a way that surprises me. I had always equated him with the like kind of corniness of early Silver Age Justice League stuff. And I like that. I like that corniness. I think it's great. And obviously, I know he like his career started in the Golden Age stuff. I haven't read enough Golden Age comics. I would like to read more. What I have read, I've liked. But in the 70s, he had like a ton of stuff that he did that was like weird horror and macabre stuff. And this falls really nicely into that category, but with like kind of a pulp novel science fiction-y twist to it. It's a really fun vampire story that's just beautifully illustrated, and like the Silver Age part of it that I like that's in this is like the situation keeps getting more complicated, which is something that I think is a tendency to happen with Silver Age comics, which is something that I enjoy about them. Um, but he also did, unrelated to this, a couple of Marvel premiere stories with Doctor Strange that were like kind of Lovecraftian and really creepy and atmospheric. And Gardner Fox is a great writer. The Don McGregor Rich Buckler stories, there's two of them. The first one is about Morbius the Living Vampire, who I had never really given a shit about. Um, but this is a really cool Morbius story that's in here. And it's by Rich Buckler. I like the way that he draws like horror and magic shit a lot. And it's really good. There's all these weird little touches, like this guy is setting up his girlfriend to get kidnapped by an evil cult, and then we follow him home and we see that he's living in a house with a bunch of drug dealers, like hipster type drug dealers, and he's like, "What the fuck are you guys doing? You can't be dealing drugs in here. You're gonna get us busted, and then they'll find out that I've been, doing murdery Satan shit." Which is just like a fun, weird tension to put in there, and was like kind of inventive, and I enjoyed that. And also, like, yeah, the Morbius thing. Like, Morbius is a guy that I had the timing wrong on when he came out. I had always thought that he was circumventing the comics code's ban on vampires, because for a very long time you couldn't have any supernatural creatures, vampires, werewolves, mummies, shit like that. Were just off the table. You couldn't have a comic book that featured those and have it be approved by the comics code. And so Morbius, I had thought, was circumventing that, because they make a big point of he's the living vampire, and he's like a science vampire who's not really a vampire. He just has a disease that is like vampirism. But no, it turns out that he was one of the first horror characters to come out after the comics code let you start having vampires. So I feel like it's kind of one of those where it's just like Marvel was like maybe testing the waters and was like, they say we can have vampires. I feel like it might be a trick. Let's give ourselves some plausible deniability. Like, yeah, that's, sure, yeah, okay, you're telling me weed's legal, but we're just going to do CBD for a year first just to make sure. And so I was like, who gives a shit? Fucking make a vampire or don't make a vampire. Shit or get off the pot. But this story's really good and really dark. And like, one of the problems I always had with Morbius is they make him this like sympathetic character who's like never really kills anybody. In this, like, or like he'll kill one bad guy and then he'll mope about it for the issue about the fact that he has to kill. And then in this one, it's like, no, he's a tragic figure in that he doesn't want to be a vampire, but when he goes vampire, he just he eats good guys and bad guys and shit. And yeah, he rescues this lady, but like it's a lady that he had been planning on eating, and then he just ate somebody else and then was full and was just like, now that I'm not hungry, I can see it's a pretty dick move to eat a lady. But I feel bad about eating that cab driver because that cab driver seemed rad. And the cab driver was fucking rad. Anyway, it's a really good, really dark story, and there's a bad guy that's introduced in it called like Lark something that as like a title, and it's like, I'm trying to find it there. Yeah, you can just watch me read silently to myself. That'll make some good video content. Yeah, I can't remember the name, and I can't find it, but it's Lark something, like Lark Springer or something like that, and it's not like her name, it's her title, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool name. The other Rich Buckler and Don McGregor story that's in here is really fucking weird. I don't know if you're familiar with the film They Might Be Giants. It's a Peter Sellers movie from the 70s that is about a rich guy whose wife dies and he gets real sad and decides to convince himself that he's Sherlock Holmes to deal with his mental problems, which is a fun way to do that, I guess. But it basically takes that premise and then has a character who is doing the same thing fight vampires. And it's really weird and really fun and really dark and brings all of this weird, because it's Don McGregor, also brings in these aspects of like race and like class conflict. It's not necessarily handled great, but it's just like there's so much going on. Yeah, and there's a brothel that's filled with vampires, and it's just so damn weird and like heady and trying hard in a way that I really appreciate. That's really fun to read. There's also a story that I couldn't figure out who the writing and art team is in it. It's not listed, but it's set in the Salem witch trials, and it's about this dickhole who wants to marry this lady because he finds out that she's rich, and then she won't marry him, so he accuses her of witchcraft, and the whole town turns against her because Salem and witch trials and sucked. But they chase her into the woods, and then he breaks his leg, and then the rest of the team goes off, and the lady comes back, and she's just like, "Hey, dick, I'm not a witch. I'm a vampire." And she sucks his goddamn blood, because fuck that guy. And I like to believe that then she went off and lived happily ever after, and she would have just been fine. Nobody would have had any problems if he wasn't just a greedy fuck. But that's a really fun story, too, and the Steranko story is really really cool looking because it's Steranko and just really interesting layout and design. And man, overall, Vampire Tales, hell of a fucking read. Yeah, you should definitely check it out. Although, with the caveat that the Satana story does center around a assault attempt, and if that's the kind of thing you're not looking to read, then maybe skip that story. It's only 4 pages. Oh, there's also like a really cool like article about Bela Lugosi in here. So I gotta get some more of these Vampire Tales magazines. They're really cool. They did a nice job. Just yeah, all-star talent list going into it. Roy Thomas was the editor-in-chief, and nice work. Everybody contributing to Vampire Tales. Well done. All right. Well, thanks, and I'll be back soon with another spooky comic. All right, goodbye.